Hello and welcome to the Men's Movement Podcast. I am your host, Vince Casey. This is a podcast where we explore the rising culture in men's healing and interview top thought leaders about the positive shift occurring in the masculine consciousness. The Men's Movement Podcast is in partnership with the Brotherhood of Cascadia. Brotherhood of Cascadia, connecting men to their hearts. Our guest today is none other than Vince Chafin, aka Matoska, aka Uncle. He is a community builder, an alchemist of sacred containers, a facilitator, and a leader at Sacred Sons. Vince, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Vince. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, what's been most alive with you this week? How has your week been so far?
It's been a very full week. Family here, extended family here the week before. So this week has been in recovery mode from that. Very, very glad to be home. It's quiet. It's peaceful. My beloved is here, so all is right with the world. All is well.
Wonderful. Yeah, I actually just got back from Texas last night. I was supposed to be back at 9 a.m. I ended up being back around 2 a.m. So I, too, am very grateful to be home and got a good chance to look into my roots a little bit and go to Texas. And now I'm home talking to you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Awesome.
Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show. As I mentioned in your introduction, you're a leader at Sacred Sons. And before you were active with the Mankind Project. What drew you into doing men's work?
Oh, gosh. A lot of things. I had been doing multiple modalities for healing and therapy and family constellation work. Adult children of alcoholics, trying all kinds of things to figure out why I was thinking and feeling the way I was feeling. I'm trying to make sense of life as a whole. Reading lots of books. I was diving into anything and everything that I possibly could. And then at the time I was living in Santa Barbara, involved in multiple communities there. And different men started to show up in my life. Now, whether they were showing up in my life or I was showing up in theirs, now that I think about it, I'm not too sure. But a certain caliber of men started to show up in my life. And then a dear friend of mine, I was having a conversation with her, and we must have been talking something around that. And she says, well, you probably should go do that Mankind Project thing. I had no idea what she was talking about. And then she listed off the 3 or 4 or 5 guys that were in my constellation of friends who were all MKP guys. And I didn't have any idea what that was about, anything about it at the time. So I reached out to one of them, and within 3 weeks, I was on my first weekend. And I found it a profoundly transformational experience. Although I didn't quite get it until a follow-up training about 3 or 4 weeks later, an integration training that I went to. At that training, I met a man, extraordinary man, very wild and woolly and rugged. And at some point in time on the weekend, we did a couple of 2 or 3 different processes, and something just clicked inside of me. And multiple pieces, data points, I think, that I had picked up in my life, but I'd never really got them drawn together, came together at that moment. And I had an aha moment. I had a moment of awe and aha. And I was like, okay, this is something that I desperately need and desperately want in my life. And then I dove in. I got into one, what we would call an I group, an integration group. Then I got into another one. And then I started one that was basically just on facilitation. And then I started an open eye group. And I became a zealot very quickly of this work. And because I saw how much I needed it how much relief and healing that it was bringing to me, and I was seeing what it was doing for the men around me. And that kind of began a snowball from that moment, really.
Can you put into words your aha moment?
I remember the moment, and it was in this work, we would call it a sovereign peace, a piece around the king, if you will, the king archetype. And every man wants his father's blessing. Every man is desperate for that, and very few men actually get it. Most of us all long, we want not that we want our father's blessing, we long for our father's blessing. And what we don't know is that we're not always supposed to get the blessing from our father. In fact, there are other figures in our life, father figures, elders, uncles, mentors. It's their job to give that blessing and bestow that blessing. And as I think back to that moment so long ago, I think I got two things. One, the understanding that part of my suffering was my want and my desperate need for my father's blessing. And I didn't know that I needed it or wanted it or was longing for it. And the second one was, oh, wow, I just got blessed by this guy. It was kind of an around the corner, around the back side of the barn kind of a blessing, an indirect one, but it wasn't a blessing nonetheless. And something shifted in my DNA and a new awareness of, oh, here's part of the pain, part of the desire, part of the things that I was looking and longing for. Oh, this was what that was. And I've been looking at all these other places, as we all do as humans. We of course avoid pain and seek pleasure. And I was looking in all these different ways to try to get that thing that I most wanted, which was my father's blessing, my father's love, my father's approval. And I wasn't getting it from him and hadn't gotten it from him, but I got it from another man that I highly respected, which was a damn good substitute.
So, what were some of the signals that it was time to start something new with Sacred Sons? How did you get connected with them and the vision over there?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, around the time that they started, I started getting calls from an old friend, Jason McKenzie, who was one of the founders, is one of the founders of Sacred Sons. He started giving me a call going, hey, we got this thing going on over here. You should come check it out. And at first I was like, a bunch of young guys. I don't know what the hell they're doing. I've got this other thing going. And then as 2018, 2019, 2020 kicked in, the pandemic started kicking in, MKP pretty much shut down. And it was feeling for me personally, on a personal level, it was like, I'd done a lot. I'd taken a particular training all over the world, all over the MKP world anyway. And I had done a lot and accomplished quite a bit. I was very happy with what I'd been able to do. That had started to, again, as the pandemic was coming down, that started winding down. And got yet another call going, hey, we're doing this thing. I think you'd really, really like it. So I eventually said yes. I went to what they call a convergence, which is my first event with them was a convergence. And it's God, what is it? It's a international gathering. It's kind of a men's weekend, a concert, a celebration, dance, ritual combat, unbelievably deep work. And this one was up on the coast of Oregon. It was in a beautiful location, absolutely stunningly beautiful location. And there were 333 men on site. That was the biggest men's gathering I'd been to ever, even in all the time with the Mankind Project. That was a magical weekend. It was pretty awesome. And that pretty much sealed it for me. And then I just started going. I think I went to a leader training after that, was a guest there, then started stepping in and going to some weekends and eventually started leading weekends. So And I really like it. It's a modern take on an old tradition. Men need to be initiated. We need to go through some form of initiation, some form of rites of passage. And we do that. And we also incorporate a lot of play, a lot of spirit, the physical aspects, the battle. And there's something about it that's a shit ton of fun. And I really, really enjoy it a lot. And it's good for me because I'm by far, I mean, we're starting to get some more older guys in now, but by far, I'm old enough to be, definitely old enough to be most of their fathers and a lot of their grandfather, to be their grandfather. So it's helping to keep me young of mind, heart, and soul and body. And so I really enjoy it. I really enjoy being with it.
Is that where you got the nickname Uncle at?
That's where I got the nickname Uncle. Yeah, because I'm not their dad, but in all indigenous cultures, everybody, not all, in most indigenous cultures, we call ourselves relatives. We call each other relatives. There's not really, even though we're quote unquote from other families, we're one big family. So everybody's your mother age is your auntie or your mom or your uncle or grandpa or grandma, sister, brother, niece, nephew. And so I immediately went from being a father of one son and a grandfather of one to an uncle of thousands. And that's been really sweet and really beautiful. I have an amazing cadre of young nephews who I talk to often, who I mentor, and who have somebody other than their dad to reach out to for help and love and guidance and wisdom and someone to be there for.
Yeah, absolutely. I notice now that masculine alchemy has kind of become a thing in the men's healing movement. There's quite a few people out there that are coaching and their own live events. What message would you like to convey to men that are jumping into leadership in this capacity? Like, on one hand, we want this message to grow and spread. On the other hand, I personally feel like there are some partially initiated men trying to initiate others at this point.
Yeah.
Where does this topic land with you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's certainly very timely. Leadership in this work takes time. You don't just do a thing, you don't check off a few boxes and spend 6 months or a year or even 2 years or 3 years or 5 years and oh, you know what to do and you know how to lead men.
Mm-hmm.
That's not it at all. It takes time because there are so many elements that one has to bring to bear to it. And the most important one is that I am doing my own personal development work. I know myself better than anybody. I need to know my wounds. I need to know my shadows. I need to know my faults, my shortcomings. I need to know my strengths. I need to know where I can lean into. And I know, oh, there's that part of me. I know that part that needs to be seen, heard, and loved in these particular scenarios a little bit louder than others. So I need to back off from that. I need to know where I can get jealous. I need to know where I can be dangerous in a training or on a weekend. If I don't sleep, eat, if I get triggered. So it's a very common thing now to have a lot of young men. And when I say young, I don't necessarily mean age. I mean young in the work, jumping out. I'll use this analogy. When I first started getting into medicine work, I'm the type of person who can watch, see, listen, and assimilate information very quickly. I can absorb it into me and I can just use it instantly. And so I just stepped into doing medicine work. And I hadn't even been an initiate yet. I hadn't done my time. And I was sitting and I was walking with a good friend of mine who had been doing the work for a long time. And he gave me the offer that you might be a little bit ahead of your medicine.
Mm.
And that's what I would offer to a lot of these folks. You may be just a little bit ahead of your medicine. Doesn't mean you're wrong. Doesn't mean you don't know what to do. It means that you might not know what not to do. You might not know where to hold back. Like I just had a team meeting yesterday for this very large men's and women's gathering we've got coming up in September. And I was raised on a ranch, and all my jobs growing up were construction oriented in some way or another. So I have an acute sense of tools and knowing how to use tools. And more importantly, taking the time to get the right tool for the job. So I use that metaphor often in this work. This weekend that we've got coming up in September with men and women, I know that there's not going to be anything that's going to come up on the team that I have of 50 plus people that I can't handle. I'm fully prepared. And just because I can handle it doesn't mean I should handle it. It doesn't mean I'm the right tool for the job. There may be somebody else in that circle of men and women, or several of them, that are the right tools for the job. So there's a discernment in experience and time in that one gets. It's very easy to be very cocksure and to know things. But yet most people walk through the world unaware of the difference between their intention and impact. Intention, I'm trying to help this person. Impact might be they were wounded by somebody who looks like me, yet I'm the one who's trying to be the helper, not knowing that in this particular case, I need to hand this particular person off to somebody else. Doesn't mean I can't do it, means I shouldn't be the one doing it. And that comes with time and wisdom. Why? Because I'm not attached to the outcome. That's also a great teachings for you, people young in this work. When they see some, what would one say, some big transformative pieces, somebody really gets a big piece of work done and they go from, instead of point A to B, all of a sudden they go A to G or A to R in their life. And you're like, oh man, this is awesome. Look what I did. Look what I made happen. They get a false sense of security in that. One needs to know that A, it's not me. It's never me. My job is to be hollow and empty so that the breath of God or the breath of spirit can blow through me and work through me. It's not me. It's something bigger. If I do that, and I keep that in my mind, it's not me. If I keep my ego in check, it's reminding me to not be attached to what happens. Because oftentimes people in this work want to be seen as the healer and the guru and the one that has all the answers. I can fix you. For me, that's a sign of danger. That's the person you want to run away from. Because they don't know that difference between intention and impact. They don't know, they're attached to being seen as cool and good and the one that knows what they're doing. So one of the things I offer, and when I'm teaching people how to do this work, one of the big ones is non-attached to how this is going to go. Because I don't know what your fate is, Vince. I don't know what's in store for you. I don't want you to suffer. And so part of the work that I do is to try to ease your suffering. But another sense could be your suffering could be exact medicine you need right now for you to get through the next step of your life, whatever that is. So who am I to take away the very thing that you need? So I'm very, very cautious, and I work mindfully and slowly with people so that it's not about me being seen as amazing and I can do all these things, which I can. But again, it's not, I've done enough training, I got enough tools in my tool belt that I can, when I become empty, those tools can be used. So that it's awesome that there's lots of men out there doing work. And it's awesome that there's more and more of these things popping up because men need it. Men need the support for sure. My wish, my want would be get trained and put in your time. That's why everybody went through an apprenticeship program for years. And those were usually 7 to 10 years before you could do anything. You had to work with the master so that the master, you could learn all those subtle arts that aren't talked about. And everybody right now wants to jump ahead. And I say everybody, that's a very broad statement. A lot of people want to jump ahead. And I get it.
Sure.
I was young. I was enthusiastic. I thought I could change the world. And luckily now I've been doing it enough and long enough to have a slightly, I believe, safer and broader perspective on my role in anyone's life, let alone somebody who's in front of me or a group of people who are in front of me that I'm supposed to help.
I brought you on today so we could talk about Convergence 9, which is the first ever Sacred Sons event where we are doing the work alongside women.
Yeah.
Now, as a single person, my very first thought was, wow, what a great place to meet someone who's working on themselves. And very quickly after that thought arose, my second thought was, wow, I have a lot to heal with women.
Yeah.
Most of my primary wounds as an adult has been with women. What was the thought process that made the leaders over at Sacred Sons say it was time to bring women into circle?
Well, the conversation had been being battered around for a while, especially between some of us who've been doing this work with women for some time. So it's not a foreign concept to me in any way, shape, or form. And for me personally, I love working with men, and I hope that I will be able to do that for a very, very long time. But I know for me, I keep getting called more and more and more that because I've had those situations working in a full family unit with men, women, children, dogs, cats, everybody's around. I know how transformative and profound that is. It's like the next level. Doing men's work is wonderful and it's amazing, and we need our own spaces. But when we come together, there's another level of healing that happens inside of me, even after all I've done. There's more and more. So I've been excited about that. Adam, Neil, several of us have been talking. That had been kind of percolating in the field. They'd also done a few festivals and bringing men and women into those containers at festivals. So it just finally bubbled up enough, there was enough really strong yeses. It's like, oh yeah, this is the time. And there were enough of us who were like, not just yes, but fuck yes. Absolutely. Let's make this. And so we have an extraordinary cadre of leaders. We have women coming in from all over the world as leaders and helpers and participants. What's amazing is these types of things is you have a vision. Oh my God, wouldn't X be great? And then all of a sudden X moves from the idea to a piece of paper or to a spreadsheet, and enough people say yes. And then all of a sudden a place is booked. And then the magic really starts. And the magic then becomes the collaborative practice. Oh, we're inviting all these women into our house. Well, is our house clean? Have we done all the work we need to do to get the house ready? And then they're going, we don't really like those drapes over there. We'd like to put something different over there. And that stuff you've been keeping in the back of the fridge, we're going to get rid of that. And all of a sudden now, there's these beautiful souls and spirits just coming in. Oh, we're going to do this ceremony. We're going to do this, and we're going to offer this. We want this space, and we're going to do that. It's like, wow, so much bigger and beautiful than anybody could have imagined. The very first call that we had after it got announced, Adam was leading that call, and it was more women than men. And in fact, we've had, up until recently, our ratio of men to women, there have been way more women signed up for this than men have. he asked, how many of you women here are coming actually to this weekend to find a sacred son? And like every hand went up.
Wow.
So that was like, oh, we thought we were going to have to deal with the men and their appropriate behavior around women, because that's the stereotype. Well, guess what? It's both. We have to be very careful and appropriate. We have to manage and set proper agreements and expectations, which we're doing ahead of the weekend in all of our behavior, so that the women are showing up sovereign and in their center and here for ceremony, as the men are. So we're showing up as brothers and sisters. We're not showing up to hook up with somebody. We're not showing up to find someone. Now, you may meet someone, and part of our agreements are going to be, I don't know that we've set it in stone quite yet, but like 3 to 6 months later, then you can reach out. When we step into ceremonial spaces, when we step into festivals, when we step into, hell, even going to a concert, that's an altered space. You're not really in your most centered space in that. And so both people are in a liminal space. And we do things, we say things, we make decisions. I mean, part of our weekends always are, don't quit your job, don't leave your partner, like don't do these things, because you've just had this peak experience and you're coming off this peak experience thinking, oh my God, I finally got it all figured out. I know everything I need to know about my life now, and now I'm going to blow it up. So absolutely come, absolutely be in a different way of holding yourself with the masculine, in different ways of seeing and sitting with and holding the feminine. We all have mother wounds. And until those mother wounds are healed, or at least understood and seen and loved, we will not find the partner we're looking for. We will continue to get our mother. So part of this weekend can also be, wow, I'm surrounding myself with sisters and aunties and grandmothers who are very wise and can bring extraordinary healing to us. I'm also, the next month in October, after C9, I'm part of a group training called Desert Wisdom out in Prescott, Arizona. And that is a weekend for men, with also some women on staff, some incredible facilitators, in specifically around healing the mother wound.
Wow.
What the whole weekend's set up around, healing the feminine within ourselves. When we get that healed, or at least on the pathway of understanding, we choose wiser. We choose wiser within ourselves, and we choose wiser outside of ourselves. We choose partners who can meet us and that we can meet, instead of choosing wounded people who look, sound, act just like mama did. We start to choose and call in queens.
Wow.
And that's part of this work. So C9 is a wonderful opportunity to go do that. The Desert Wisdom training is an extraordinary opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you about the Desert Wisdom, so you took that question right off the table. Very fortuitous.
Well, I'll talk just a little bit about that. So that's a weekend that two former leaders and chairmen of the Mankind Project got together and put together. This will be their 7th, I think. And I went out and did it last October as a participant and thought it was awesome. And it really helped me a lot. And immediately talked to them about how can I help? And they very graciously and very quickly invited me in to be part of it. And we've been working to, because of my work with Sacred Sons, the Mankind Project tends to be a demographic, say 40 to 70. It's kind of the average demographic there. In Sacred Sons, the average demographic right now is 20 to 35-ish, 40-ish maybe. So a younger demographic. And so we've been working over on the Desert Wisdom side to make this training much more relevant to a younger demographic. And on every weekend that I lead for Sacred Sons or participate in, men's mother wounds come to the front. So if you haven't done your mother work yet, and most men's weekends, 10 MKP Sacred Sons, tends to lead toward the masculine, tends to lead toward the father wound, because that's usually the easiest, the ones at the top. That's bubbling at the highest part of our consciousness. Why? Because that's where our anger's lying. And we use our anger to keep our grief and our sorrow and our sadness down deep. So it's easy to get mad at dad. The person in the world, the one person in the world that it's not okay to get mad at, that it's you don't have permission to get mad at, you don't have permission to be angry at, is mommy. So this weekend is around healing that so that you can call in, heal the feminine within, and call in the beautiful, balanced feminine without. And it's very exciting, and I really love the guys. The men and the women who are involved in this are really spectacular. And I really love working with them.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with everybody that's been put on the weekend so far. So really walking in with no expectations and just allowing the experience to unfold.
Nice.
One thing I'm definitely curious about is so when men are doing sacred combat, what's going to be on the menu for women at this event?
Both. So there's a woman on site who is, she has a program where she teaches Indigenous women fighting skills. It's called POW. I forget that's an acronym for something. And so she's going to be leading a morning training. There's going to be something else for them. And then if the women want to fight, put on the gloves. We're going. There's no reason why not to. Because they have, I fought the first 3 or 4 weekends I came into Sacred Sons. And that was extraordinarily healing for me. The last fight I really got into was a fight with one of my best friends, childhood friends, and then he drowned about a month later. And so I don't think I ever fought again. And all of that came back. I kind of put all of that away. And most men, unless you're a warrior, an athlete, most men are taught that to put away that part of ourselves. That whole book, Where the Wild Things Are. Be a good boy. Listen to your mommy. Don't fight. And not only are we told not to fight, we're not taught how to fight, when to fight, and where to fight, unless you were brought up in that culture. So now to have a place where you can come, you can get into your body, you can feel what that feels like again to hit, and more importantly, to be hit, and that you can be hit and you're okay. You're not going to die. We're using gigantic padded gloves. Nobody's getting hurt. But the fear factor is there. Oh my God, I'm under attack. Well, that brings up everything we all went through from 0 to 8th, 9th, 10th grade. It brings up the part in all of us, I believe, that's latent in all of us, the warrior that's latent with all of us, that needs to have a physical outlet for his power and and how to control that power. One of the things that comes up during these battles is we have all these agreements, and we do what you don't see is all this talk before the people actually fight. We set agreements, we do all this stuff. And then, especially men who are trained and big men, it's about control. Can I have that feeling of being under threat and being attacked, and enough presence of mind right here to control it? Like the very first fight I was in, I called out, very stereotypically, I called out the biggest guy to fight. The biggest, most masculine guy, because that was the kind of guy I was most afraid of. Well, bless his heart, he just He basically just kind of held back and he let me hit him because I couldn't. There was nothing I could do to hurt him, really. And he gave me the space to move that energy and to get it out of my body, and that it was okay. And he held me. He had perfect restraint. What can also happen, and a part of my job as a leader there, some men will get punched in the face and go right back to being hit by their stepdad or dad or whatever, and boom, they're in it. And they completely regress. They're no longer in the present moment. And now I've got to pull them off so they don't hurt the other person and then bring them back to this moment. Oh, right. We're here. Right. How does that show up in your life? How often something happens, you get triggered, and you are now unconscious. Somebody or something else is driving your bus. That little wounded part of yourself is now in charge. Women want the same thing. I've had weekends up here at my land where we've done what we would call racket work or bat work, or it's basically a big bioenergetic, and let the woman do that. And oh my God, they just love it. Because, hey, they want to rage and hit too. They've got a lot of anger too that needs to go somewhere. And they've been told they can't let it out. They let it out differently. Manipulation, lies, acting. They get their needs met, but in different ways. So here's a way to absolutely do it. So if the women want to put on gloves, they're going to do it. We're also going to have tug of war. If the women want to fight each other, if there's a man they want to call out and the man wants to go, we may let that happen. We'll see. I'm going to watch that. Could be a boyfriend and girlfriend thing.
All right.
We'll see. But the great thing is the leaders, even though it looks like there's this chaotic thing happening, we're very much in control of what's going on. And we all monitor it very, very carefully and stop anything before anything gets weird, dangerous, anybody gets hurt. This is just giving ourselves the illusion of battle. This is not really, no one's there to hurt anybody. And if they are, they don't get to go in. We don't let those people in. We're very careful of who we let in, who we put the gloves on, and why.
I have heard small factions of men that are possibly a little disgruntled because they're getting their weekend away of being unapologetically masculine, or getting all their grunts and farts out is being taken away. What do you say to that group that's advocating?
Yeah. I say that's just utter bullshit. So the way this is going to look, we're going to have a women's camp, only women. We're going to have a men's camp, only men. And then there's a couples camp in between. Each team, specifically regarding C9, each team is going to have about 50 people, half and half, men and women. And after our opening ceremony, we're going to then split off men and women for the first 24 hours. The women are going to be with the women, the men are going to be with the men. After that first 24 hours, we're going to come back together and then spend the rest of the weekend together. This argument that you've brought up, I've heard this before. I tried to bring in some co-ed trainings into the Mankind Project. And men who I thought that were balanced, enlightened, I judged to be men who'd really step into that. Those are the ones who are just like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're killing our stuff. It's hilarious what this brings up for people. Sacred Sons isn't going to stop doing men's weekends. We still got a bazillion weekends planned. We're still going to do convergences. In fact, it looks like we're going to do 5 of them next year, maybe. And we're going to continue at least once or twice a year to do these remembrances, which will be co-ed events. So anybody who brings that kind of stuff up, I would invite them to go look in a mirror and go do their mommy work and go do the work on their feminine.
Maybe they need to show up even more.
They need to show up even more. Absolutely, man. I learned a long time ago how we get afraid of things. And when I was younger, it would show up as butterflies in my stomach. I'd get really nervous about things. And then I finally saw the pattern. And the pattern was fear, butterflies, run from fear, still have fear, face fear and do the thing I was afraid of, new me on the other side. That is the hero's journey. That is facing the dragon. If I don't face the thing that I'm afraid of, how the hell am I ever going to grow and be something more than I am? And allow my soul to me, my job on this planet, my work to help others is to get all of this out of the way of my soul's calling. What is my soul's true calling to do here? And what are all the things that I or my culture or my family or whatever have put in the way of that? And maybe I've put some stories. Yeah, come on, old man. Come on. Maybe I've put some stories. What stories, what beliefs, what fallacies have I put in the way of my soul's true calling? And for me personally, my job is constantly shedding, pulling away, unlocking, whatever metaphor you want to use, to get the shit out of the way so that my soul can do what it was called here to do, whatever that is, without attachment to outcome. My attachment to outcome is to try to let this golden bird out of its cage. The cage that I built for it, the cage that my society built for it, the cage that my family built for it, and all the stories and everything that I've told myself, everything I've built up to justify keeping it in its cage. And all the work that I do for myself and others, even though I go do this work for other people, part of that's for me too. I'm watching and listening, and every time they have an opening, a healing, an awakening of some kind, that's mine too. All right? That frees us all. If you let yourself out of your cage, that gives my soul that much more space, that much more opportunity to let itself free. Yeah. So if I'm walking into things with, oh my God, I can't believe, what if, how dare they? Like, if I'm walking around in that paradigm, my God, I've shut myself up pretty tight. And I want to find those keys to get myself out.
So if this is a successful event, do you foresee a Sacred Sisters branch emerging from Sacred Sons, or maybe even Sacred Souls chapter?
I sure hope so. One thing I always wanted MKP, one of the chairmen of MKP, when I kind of first got involved, I really liked him a lot. God, I can't think of his name right now. Hopefully it'll come to me. And he saw the Mankind Project not as a men's organization, but as a training organization, an education organization. And to build a hub and then have all these alternate subsidiaries coming off of that. So what I would love to see happen, they're Sacred Sons, they're Sacred Sisters. We already have a Sacred Sons, SONZ, for boys 12 to 18. Maybe there's a Sacred Sisters organization for girls 11 to 18, 19. There's no reason why it has to be a thing. Because again, I don't think that my liberation as a man, a masculine man, is not singular. It doesn't just affect me. It affects my family. It affects my community. It affects everybody that I touch. And that world that it touches is filled with women. So how could we not, if Spirit's calling us to get beyond what we think we are, what I am, and to take in, wrap my arms just a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further around this thing called life, maybe, I don't know. I'm not in any way, shape, or form in any place to make any decision like that, but that would sure be exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always felt that a part of my purpose this lifetime is to usher in a revolution of love and healing. Mm-hmm. And this is really the first time in my life that I feel like I'm actively participating in that purpose. Nice. And the men's work is so necessary because, you know, a lot of us weren't showing up in a good way.
Mhm.
And if we really are ready to unite with women in a healthy way and start to put an end to the division that is between us, this could really be a monumental moment. And I'm rooting for everyone involved.
Thank you. I am too. I've done enough of these types of things to know how special it is for all of us, because the women need it too. There are women out there who have never had a positive interaction with a man in their life. And what would it be like if they were surrounded by hundreds of positive, grounded, safe, mature, strong, passionate men who are alive, men who are vulnerable, men who aren't afraid to cry, men who aren't afraid to fight, men who aren't afraid to stand up for what they believe in, men who are protectors and providers. That would change all of those women's lives. They would be able to see men completely different than they've seen them their whole life. I mean, my God, where does all this power and patriarchy bullshit come from? It comes from wounded people. So it's not just for the men to heal their feminine, it's also for the feminine to heal their masculine. And as several of the women have already stated in our calls, thank you, thank you, thank you. We have been praying for this for so long. They are longing for it. So this is an opportunity for all of us to just step into that way of being that we've been dreaming of. If I could have it the way I really wanted it, what might that look like? It might look like being able to be in connection with every human I come across and to be able to express that with kindness, respect, tenderness, love, protection. And the whole world can't be like that because there are people out there in the world who don't want what we want and who are not healthy to take to, who don't want to create that kind of world. But in these moments, in these containers, that world is possible. And then we're all going to have an extraordinary time. I predict that for sure. And what's more important is what happens after. Those ripples that come out of this. As everybody goes back to their lives all over the world, how is that now going to change? Who are they now in that place? Who are they now and how are they now and how are they with the people around them? That's the difference. The event is one thing. It's a peak experience and it's an extraordinary thing. But to me, that's not where the transformation and the real world healing takes place. It's what happens when everybody goes home. There's going to be a lot of couples there. How are they going to be with each other when they get home now? Differently than they were before. How are you going to approach women now after having this extraordinary experience, different than you did before? How are you going to walk? How are you going to hold yourself? How are you going to be with the little old ladies at the grocery store? Like, how are you showing up as a provider and a protector for your community? Women see it, hear it, smell it, sense it. And when there's a safe man in the room, a dangerously safe man in the room, they all take a deep breath and they can relax a little bit because they know he's making sure that the psychopaths and the assholes are being watched and they're not going to get away with anything. Part of that whole fighting part is to reawaken the part inside of us that goes, no, that motherfucker over there, he's not getting away with it. I'm not letting that happen. Women are waiting for us to step up into that and to remember that's part of our job as men. It's not to be these passive whatever's going on right now. That is not it. Not it. It's us to have a spine and a backbone and to walk. And even if we don't know, we say we don't know, but we hold them in reverence. We hold their daughters in reverence. We hold their sisters in reverence. We hold their mothers and their aunties in reverence. We hold their grandmothers in reverence. They see that. They feel that. A woman wants to be protected and provided for. Doesn't mean she can't take care of herself. That's the twist that got screwed up on this. But part of what I hope comes out of this is men remember their role and their responsibility in society, in community, amongst themselves and with women. They stand up a little straighter. They hold themselves differently. And that the women can come out of this going, Jesus, I'm so glad I came. There are good men left in the world. They're not all assholes. They're not all predators. And they'll stop telling that story. All men are this, all men are that, all men are that. Because it's just not true. It's not even close to true. What's true is, unfortunately, because of their wounds, that's what they've called in. And so if they heal their wounds, they're going to call in a different kind of man. And that's just part of what I believe this weekend's going to accomplish.
Yeah, it's time for us to show up for them and meet them in a healthy way and be a safe container for women so we can change the story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we mentioned some of the shadow work that men do at these events, like primal recalibration, where we have an opportunity to release negative emotions through sound and expression. This was such an important piece of the puzzle for me in the beginning because I did have so much rage in me that never had a safe place to land. So I would generally just bottle it up until it exploded in cruel ways. I think why doing the work is so hard for men is oftentimes it leads us to a place that we're trying to avoid, the shadow. I've been spending time trying to define the shadow. Religion has taught us that our flesh is inherently evil and we need to repress it at all cost. And we see where that's landed us. I've also heard theories of it being repressed aspects of our wounded child. What is your definition of the shadow?
Well, it's not mine. It's one I adopted that it's one we said all the time in MKP, which came from Carl Jung, the things that we hide, repress, and deny. I'll say that again. The shadow aspects are the things, parts of ourselves that we hide, repress, or deny. Now, most people, in the first connotation we get when somebody says shadow or shadow work or that shadow, is that's negative. More people spend time hiding their gold and their gifts than they do the things that they're afraid of. We hide our light more than we hide our darkness. So again, anything that I hide, repress, or deny. Now, what I want to do, one of the fallacies is, oh, I'm going to do this shadow work and I'm going to heal these parts of myself. No, you're not. What you're going to do, hopefully, is bring that part of yourself some love and some understanding and some listening so that that part of you can now be seen and heard without being a destructive force in your life. And that you bring those parts instead of back behind you where you thought they were hidden, where you and nobody else could see them, you bring them over here next to you. So you're all walking together. You're walking side by side. Those wounds aren't going anywhere. The trauma's not going anywhere. It's my understanding of that, my acceptance of that, the love that I bring to that. That's what shifts. What I make it mean about it, myself, the world. We all go through things. All kinds of things have happened to all of us. Some things extraordinarily horrific, unbelievably horrible. And every time something happens, for us as humans to survive, we create a story about it. We make it mean something. That's how it gets stored. Stimulus, meaning, good, bad. Bad, Don't do that again. Good. Oh, do that again. If I see that again, I'm going to do that thing again. Well, we've all been hurt. And through those hurts, again, we've created stories. And if I make these things mean bad, person bad, country bad, men bad, women bad, then I'm running around through the world with this beautiful projection and this beautiful storyline projected onto everything that looks like that or sounds like that. And what I want to do is break that down, break that projection down, break that story apart, and write a different story. Dad shouldn't have left me alone at the supermarket that time. Okay. That could be true. Maybe. Maybe it's actually, maybe if we flip that, Dad should have left me alone that time at the grocery store when I was 3. Now, if I think about it that way, and then I go, well, maybe he was just trying to see if I could figure out my way back to him or back to the car. Oh, shit. I wonder if he was trying to teach me resilience and self-sufficiency, because someday I would be lost. Someday he wouldn't be there, and I'd need to find my way. I made that mean, oh, he doesn't love me. Look at him. He abandoned me. But that was through the eyes and the understanding of a 3-year-old. A 3-year-old doesn't know anything about the world. Nothing. Zero. Neither does a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old. So if we can flip that story around what we call shadow, those things that I'm putting away, that people didn't like about me, or that got me embarrassed at school, made people laugh at me, whatever those things were, those are all parts of that soul that I was talking about. That's all parts of me. So if I bring those back in and own those parts and love those parts, nurture those parts, that's part of my soul's liberation. To be complete, to be whole, with all my foibles and my fallacies and my wrongful thinking and my mistakes. Bring it all in, all of it, right? If I don't know that I can be a predator and that I am a predator, because I was raised a hunter, I know how to hunt things. If I don't know that about myself and I try to put that part of me away, then it manifests itself out is maybe being a predator towards women, right? So maybe I need to know that part of myself, to know when I see and hear and feel that come online, and give that part of myself some love so we can calm down a little bit. One of the metaphors I love to use, around this, there's 2 of them, but I'll use one of them. You got all these parts of you. We all do, all of us. So imagine that you're an adult and you like to drink coffee and read the newspaper. And tomorrow morning, you're going to get up, and tomorrow morning, where you're going to go is you're going to go to the local preschool. And there's going to be little ones, say 2 to 4 or 5 there. And there's about 30 of them, let's say. And what do little ones of that age do? They're running around, they're yelling, screaming, crying. There's utter chaos going on. And so you walk in, you're being a proper adult, you've got your paper under your arm, you got your nice cup of coffee, you get a nice little stool right in the middle of the room, you sit down, you put your stool down, you sit down like a proper gentleman, you have a little sip of your coffee, you set that down, and you open up your newspaper. You're going to read your newspaper. Well, what's the first thing that's going to happen? Within a 13th of a second, there's going to be a little one, bam, poking at your newspaper. And one's going to be back here poking at you. And then one's going to be like, what is that? And they're going to spill the coffee. And then the next thing you know, you got one crawling on your lap. That's your shadow. Those are your shadow aspects. Those are all the wounded parts of you that are trying desperately to get your attention. And the more you ignore them, what happens? They get more boisterous. They get louder. You got more climbing on you. You got more tearing at your paper. Now, the smart thing to do is to put the paper down and then pick up the first one that comes to you and bounce them on your knee and basically look at them in the face. And whatever you say doesn't matter. But what you are saying is, I see you, I hear you, and I love you. That's the message you're sending to the subconscious of that little spirit. I see you, I hear you, I love you. You are seen, you are heard. What was the greatest line that came out of the 2000s from Avatar? I see you. It touched, changed the world of the whole spiritual community. You give them that love, and they're only going to want, because anybody who's been around little kids knows this. It's like picking up my cat. He just wants to be held for like 13 to 17 to 20 seconds. And then poof, he's gone. So you do that for the first one that comes up. And as soon as you try to hold on to them too long, what do? And they run off. And then the next one comes up. And if you give them the attention and love that they need, eventually you're the most boring thing in the room. Boom, they're gone. But the more you try to push them away, your feelings, your doubts, your scarcity, the parts of yourself you don't like, the more you try to make them go away, what do? They get louder and louder and louder. And you do porn, gambling, all the beautiful things, too much gaming, all the things to get they bring in and manifest within you to get their needs met subconsciously. You're not doing that consciously, you're doing that unconsciously. Serial relationships. So those unowned, hurt, wounded parts of ourselves need us to just love them and to tell a different story about them. And they just want to be heard. They're trying to send us messages, but we're not listening. So they get heard by us doing other things, quitting that job, blowing up that relationship. Again, online porn, gambling, drugs and alcohol, all of it. That's all that is. Healed parts of the self trying desperately to get seen, heard, and to feel good and not feel bad. But if they get seen and they get heard and they get loved, that part calms down. And if you develop a relationship with that part, you talk to it. Ideally, when not to other people around, you're not walking through the Walmart talking by yourself, looking like a crazy person. That part eventually doesn't need to talk so loud, doesn't need to act out so much, and eventually will calm down enough that you probably won't even hear from that part of yourself anymore. Shadow work has been around a long time. It's become very much a cliched word right now. A lot of people throw it around who don't really know what they're talking about. If you really want to understand shadow work and how to do shadow work, you need to go to Cliff Berry, who is in Denver, Colorado. Barry, Cliff Berry. And he came through the Mankind Project. He was the first class of graduates of the very first Warrior Weekend. He eventually became a full leader within the Mankind Project and then very quickly left to develop a much deeper psychic surgery methodologies around working with the shadow. And he's developed a whole curriculum called shadow work. And he actually has trademarked that. He actually owns that term. And all my mentees, after they've done other trainings, eventually I send them there. Because that is some of the highest level of training you can get in doing this type of work.
So all aspects of shadow are just repressed aspects of our higher selves that we need to allow to the table. And once they're at that table, then that aspect of us is healed.
Well, I wouldn't say healed. Again, understood and less destructive.
Sure.
Okay? Because that part's always going to be there. The trauma that created that separation in the psyche, you can't undo that. that happened at 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 or 10 or whenever. That's not getting undone, because that's in your cellular, as they say, the issues are in the tissues. That's in you. What you can do is shift, bring that part of yourself and that part of your story, that belief about what happened. Because when I'm 5 and I experience something, I experience the thing through the eyes, the understanding, the intellectual, the emotional capacity of a 5-year-old. Not an adult, a 5-year-old. And again, a 5-year-old doesn't know anything about the world. So, and then I carry that. I attach the stimulus to the story, and that gets stored inside of me. And then I keep telling that story over and over to anybody who will listen. Oh, when I was such and such, this and such, my dad did this to me. My mom did that. We just repeat these stories ad nauseum about what happened to me, not thinking, one, I have no idea what really happened. I was a child, so I don't really know what happened. Number 2, every time I retell that story, I dig a groove like a record deeper and deeper and deeper into my psyche, into my body. And I recreate that story every time I tell it. I keep that trauma alive, that trauma loop alive, and my body viscerally feels it every time I tell the story. I reinforce it. I make it stronger and bigger. Well, sooner or later, you're going to be an adult. And it's not that the thing didn't happen, but you don't really know exactly what happened. And more importantly, you don't know why it happened. Now, does it serve me to continue to tell the story? Oh, mom did X. Oh, dad did that. Oh, so-and-so did this. When I'm in my 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s about something that happened 50, 60 years ago. It makes no sense whatsoever. That keeps me a victim. Look at me, I'm broken. That keeps me, I don't have to take any responsibility for my life. I can blame everybody else. Humans love to do that. We love to do that. We really don't want to take responsibility for our lives. We'd much rather blame mom and dad or society or whoever, stepdad, step whatever. Now, I'm not taking away, please don't misunderstand that shit happens to people that's quote unquote real and fucked up. If I keep playing it out the way that I tell the story, does it serve me in my healing and serve me to help others in this world? If I tell a different story, I was raped, I was sold into sexual slavery, I was kidnapped. Those things happened, and they had a devastating effect. Now, I could then, at some point in time in my 20s or 30s and 40s, when I finally been able to get my mind around all of that, I then might tell a story of these things happened to me, and this is how I got through it and got to the other side. I.e., a hero story, a redemption story. Because everybody's going through something, some kind of pain and hurt and trauma. What they want to know is, this is why the whole hero's journey is set up the way it is. The last thing the hero does when he slays the dragon and gets to the other side of the challenge, whatever that is he goes back to the community and tells the story. That's the final piece. That's critical because the people in the village need to know we're the type of people that can slay dragons. We're those kinds of people. Holy shit.
Yeah.
We didn't know that until one of us was brave enough to go do that. Now, if he would have got killed like the 10 guys before, well, then we don't know. The whole point of the survival, when we do these big processes with men and women, the whole point of the process, we'll say this to each other and remind each other, especially with younger facilitators, I'll whisper in their ears, he's got to win. Give him the win. He has to get to the other side of this obstacle so that he can come back to the village, i.e., his psyche, all those broken parts of himself, and tell them, we have the capacity to heal. We have the capacity to win. We can slay this dragon, this story, whatever it is. So for me personally, part of what I've learned, all the shit that I went through in my life, that I had all these stories that my dad was this and my mom was this and all of that, and everything that happened to me, I have flipped all of that as that I had the exact right mom I was supposed to have. I had the exact right father I was supposed to have. I went through the exact experiences I was supposed to go through. If I hadn't gone through and was raised the way I was raised and gone through all the hell I went through, I would not be the guy I am right now out there helping people. I wouldn't be that guy. I wouldn't have the capacity or the understanding. I had to go through the pain and the suffering so that I understand what pain and suffering is. And that I could have the capacity to hold that and be in space with others who are going through the grief and the suffering, and to show them there is hope and there is healing on the other side. It can be different. Nothing that happened is going away, but how you walk with it, how you talk about it, how you incorporate it in your body and in your life and with your loved ones, completely different. That can be different. The story you tell can be one of redemption and hope and perseverance and grit, instead of, oh, poor me, look what fucking happened. My daddy never loved me. Yeah, well, welcome to the club. Like, that's not a new story. That's a human story, right? That's not your story or my story. That's a human mode. That's a story. That's an archetype we're just attached to. Okay. How about a different story? My dad was fucking amazing. I had a roof. I had a full refrigerator. I had shoes. I had clothing. I had running water in the house. We had a house. Fuck, that's amazing.
Wow.
That's the top 10% of humans on the planet Earth, maybe top 1%. Everything else that happened, whatever. But I had that. That's a way better story. I didn't starve. Like, fuck, there are people starving. So to me, if I tell myself that story, I am in a much different psychophysiology when I leave this house to show up for others. I can show up way different than if, oh yeah, look, this happened and that happened and dad was a drunk and mom was crazy and like all of that, how does that serve anybody? Other than, yeah, bro, I get what you're going through. I went through something similar. And here's what I've done to get to the other side. That's way better. It's way fucking better.
So, as an uncle that has slayed some dragons and
Yes.
come back to the village,
Yes.
The aspects of your shadow are still prevalent. They just have a seat at the table, and you
They're here
know
with
them
me.
by name, and you hear what they have to say.
Absolutely. I'm not afraid to address any of them at any time. Absolutely. I too am a human being with an ego and a wanting to be seen, heard, and loved, not wanting to be abandoned. I have all these parts. I have a part that, what are more? I want to be loved like everybody else. And I have used my looks, my charm, my my sexual prowess as a man to swoon, to use women for my own benefit through my 20s, 30s, maybe, I don't know, into the 40s that late, but certainly all through my teens for sure, 100%.
Yeah,
They don't
that's
know. From a Buddhist perspective, we don't know better. We're acting out of ignorance, right? Because we just don't know. No one taught us anything. And men and women do that, right? Because we don't want to be abandoned. We don't want to be kicked out of the tribe. So we do everything we can to be seen, heard, and loved, and to be held tightly somewhere. So we're not out, we're in. Everybody wants to be in, nobody wants to be out, right? So we do all kinds of things to stay in. And I need to know all that about myself so that when I'm working with people, there's been many times there's been something or someone in front of me who has had identical wounding to my own. And I feel that coming up inside of me. Oh. And I've now learned to dance with that energy, to be so present with them, and I'll be in the tears with them, and I'll be in the screams, and I'll be in the suffering with them, because I know that one. I got it. And I also know when I'm not the right tool for the job. I can sense that and I can feel it. And somebody else that's also knowing my shadow, if you will, or knowing my gifts, and not knowing that this person's spirit brought them here at this moment. So what energy or spirits around here in this moment need to be brought to the fore to help them? Is that mine? Is that yours? I don't know whose that is. Could be mine. I could make something happen. But if I really know these parts of myself and I'm really listening and attuned, I can hear and feel and sense, oh, and I will look and I'll go, you. Like, I'll know who the right tool is. Or when I say spirit knows, I just got to get the fuck out of the way. So yeah, I'm taking all those parts of me with me everywhere I go. I'm still working on them. I still do personal development work. I still do training. Next week, I'm going to be up in Washington at a guts training with my mentor, one of my mentors. Still learning facilitation, still diving into all the little subtleties because it's so deep and profound. You don't go to one or two trainings and go, oh, okay, I know what to do. That's just not how it works from my perspective. And maybe I'm just hard-headed and it takes me a lot, but I also don't believe that. I believe it takes lifetime of study to really understand.
Well, I certainly brought you on because of your perspective today. We are getting towards the end of our conversation. Is there any little nugget of wisdom or something that's helped you along your path that you'd like to leave with the men today before we sign off?
Sure. Two things. There's a famous quote by Muhammad Ali. In fact, I think I have it here. Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Young men and young women, this applies to mostly young men, need and want to have a mission, a purpose in their life. And oftentimes we get so stuck on trying to identify what that thing is, we stay focused here. What's my purpose, my mission, me. And I think the quickest way to find out what you could be doing on this planet is to start doing things for other people. Show up, be in service to others. You don't need to know why, none of that. Just show up. Take the cart back at the grocery store for the little old lady. Let kids set up a lemonade stand in your front yard. If your sister needs help moving, you go help her. Like, you start showing up for other people, even when you don't want to. That's going to shift everything in you. If you have a tendency for depression, suicidal ideation, showing that's always inwardly focused. Me, what I have, what I don't have, what I should have, what I shouldn't have, what I could have, what I could have had. It's all here. The way to shift out of that is to be focused there, outside. So find ways and places to show up for others. Okay? You'll feel better. People will appreciate you. They will see you, hear you, and love you, which is your core underlying needs. And you'll feel good about yourself, like you're actually doing something in the world. And it will, if you keep doing that, your purpose on this planet will be revealed. It will make itself manifest. And Maya Angelou talked about an old song. And she then turned it really into her mode of moving through the world. And it's very much along these same lines. She called it being a rainbow in the clouds. We all have cloudy days, cloudy moments. My want for myself, my want for you, my want for anybody who's listening to this is be a rainbow in someone's cloud. There's somebody you haven't called. There's something you're avoiding. There's someone out there who just needs a smile from you or a hug. And that little tiny gesture could be the thing that keeps them on the planet today. There are people who are suffering so bad that they believe the world would be better off for them not to be here. That we would all be better off if they were to disappear. And we, I, you, any of us, could be the person to help shift that today. Might not shift it for tomorrow, the next day, the next, but it could be just enough. That little smile, that phone call, that little gesture, that little kind thing that you do could be the thing that saves somebody's life today, let alone changes their life. This is why I keep going to weekends. My job is to be a rainbow in somebody's cloud, because I have spent decades in clouds. I don't want anybody to have to suffer like that. We don't have to. Everybody who's here, everybody who's listening, anybody who's alive and a sentient being can be a rainbow in somebody's cloud. So shift the focus from here to there, and everything in your life will change. And the things that you want and need will appear. Your own personal understandings will arise, but be focused out there. Who and where can you show up and make a difference in this world? And your world will change. Way for the better.
Beautiful words of wisdom, Vince. I can certainly attest to how becoming selfless has changed my life in a very positive way. And I wish you all the luck and success for Convergence 9. You'll see me out there. I'll be in Wolfpack.
Oh, so glad. Good. Awesome. Good.
Yeah,
Good.
I'll be able to give you a hug and meet you for the first time.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's been an honor spending time with you today. Thank you so much for taking us a little deeper into shadow work and diving into Convergence 9.
You're welcome.
If someone would like to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Oh gosh, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. It's not very difficult these days to find people. So and I'm on the website. So just do a quick search. It's easy to find me.
All right, I'll certainly include that in the show notes. That's our show today. I'd like to thank you, Vince, for coming on today. I'd like to thank our partner, Brotherhood of Cascadia, and I'd like to thank all of you for listening. Next month, we'll be talking to Kareem Manuel about the work he's doing. And until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. If you have questions for the show or would like to locate men's work in your area, be sure and email us at mensmovementpodcast@gmail.com.